Hey everybody, welcome to the Kickstarter preview video for ESSEN the board game. Now I have only had a chance to play this game on Vassal online with the publisher and the designer himself. And so they asked me to, instead of doing kind of like a normal preview video where I would go through the rules, just kind of cut right to the chase and kind of give you sort of the review part that normally appears at the end of my videos. So I'll put up some links here in case you're watching this, through my YouTube channel and not directly on their Kickstarter page. I will put up, links back to Kickstarter page and back to some of the walkthroughs and the how-tos. Now, an interesting thing that the publisher is going to be doing is they're going to be running Vassal demos throughout the Kickstarter campaign. So if you want, you can kind of schedule to go and play the game with them, or even watch, a game being played via Google Hangout or Skype or something like that. So that'll be an interesting way to do it. Now, just if you want to hear me talk a little bit about it, the game basically is you are running a booth as a board game publisher publishing your games. And the cool thing about that is that each player has their own player board, but it is actual physical space. So you have sort of like these different lanes where you're either going to have sales tables or demo tables. Now, sales tables are hopefully going to generate income for you, and the demo tables are hopefully going to generate buzz or hype for the game. And so you're going to be managing that aspect of the game. And then you have one worker, which is kind of like you, sort of like your avatar. And you basically can play that. You can send them to the demo tables to get in there and really kind of drum up the hype and the buzz for the game. Or you can kind of send them over to a main board. You can go and maybe buy ad space, buy a couple other little kind of special power tiles, or you can even send them to another player's booth and sort of harass them and harangue them a little bit, which is a very interesting and almost cleverly funny kind of way of some of the little antics that sometimes publishers at any kind of convention will get up to. Maybe they'll have booth babes, maybe they'll have loud music, maybe they'll have big signs, something to distract your eye and draw you from one booth away to another. And it also adds a kind of interactivity to the game where you have basically this one worker. It's almost like a worker placement, not really, but it's like a one worker placement game where you can send them to go and buy ads or harass people, but based on what people are doing, it may be better to go and sort of harass them and draw away a lot of their viewers or their players, the demoers. So a lot of your decision making is going to be based on how these demand tiles come up. And so if you get the rules or watch a more of a walkthrough video, you'll see a little bit how that works. But it's very interesting, sort of the probabilities that are going to come up, because each game is divided into 8 rounds, which is basically the 4 days of ESSEN. Each day is divided into 2 rounds, so a morning and an afternoon. And so sometimes you're going to have I think ESSEN starts on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So sometimes you'll have a strong Thursday or maybe a really strong Sunday. And so you have to kind of play the odds there and focus how many booths at your table, or how many tables at your booth, I should say, are going to be focused on sales versus focused on generating buzz, and how much you're going to spend trying to suck away the the possible patrons from the other players. And it's all sort of a very straightforward, kind of cutthroat economic game, but there's a slight little bit of endgame scoring at the end where, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, so basically if you staggered your sales the best, so basically whatever the day that you had the most money, or even the time of day, if you staggered that equally across, so that your lowest day was higher than whoever else's lowest day, kind of like a Reiner Knizia, Tigris and Euphrates kind of scoring, where it's like, okay, my lowest day was Thursday in the afternoon and I only had 2 sales, but somebody else had 0 sales on one of those days. So you get a little bit of a bump there. And then there's another one had the largest increase, so you kept going up and up, so you had a streak of always increasing sales for like 5 rounds in a row. And then finally, the last bonus is you have the most buzz basically in the game. That'll kind of carry you into distribution, post-convention. And so those are very little thematic endgame scoring goals, but people are really familiar with. Now, the really interesting thing about this goal thing is the amount of points or money that the goals are worth is going to be driven by sort of the collective whole of how the whole group does their sales. That's a really interesting idea there. So if kind of everybody had a good ESSEN, then the bonuses will be worth more or less, and you can kind of manipulate that track a little bit and get real sort of mean about it, which I like, and really kind of maybe go for like some big sale days versus going for the end game bonus, or maybe kind of, you know, ticking and tacking your strategy based on how that's kind of evolving. So that's a really cool part of the game. Now the last thing I want to say that's very interesting is getting back to that physicality of the player board. So each player, like I said, they have their own little booth with several lanes for tables. And what happens is, based on those demand tiles, they're kind of double-sided. I'm not going to get too much in the rules. It's hard to explain without the visual. But it's kind of like one side's telling you how many people are coming, and the other side is kind of telling you how many people might be buying. So that's kind of an interesting thing. You're going to know how many people are going to show up, but you're not sure what the demand is going to be out of that people. And you take these people, and they're just going to be like these Carcassonne-ish, I don't know the exact dimensions, but about Carcassonne-ish sized tiles, and everybody's going to take their chunk, kind of divide it amongst the players based on certain things, and then you kind of drop them and scatter them and sprinkle them across all your different lanes. And then, so that's going to be kind of interesting how that sort of physicality and the buildup of people works, and how some of the stealing happens, and the way the hype works, and you know, how many lanes do you need to allocate for sales to gobble up you know, all of those sort of stacks, those queues of people, you know, how that works. So that's a kind of a neat visual thing that also does goes a long way to representing kind of the supply and demand in a physical way that I think people will be able to get into. Now, we took about an hour and a half, maybe not quite that long to play a 3-player game, but that was a lot of rules explanation, you know, me kind of asking questions, and them kind of, you know, a little bit of banter back and forth. So it sounds like a really kind of heavy Euro, because I'm talking economics, supply and demand, you know, screwage, you know, the end game bonuses. But really, I think, you know, we did it over Vassal, which isn't the most intuitive way to learn. I find it okay, but a lot of people don't. But I think with a nice rule book, you know, nice visual components, and it's a theme that I think people can get really into, I think this could kind of fit in that sort of light to medium, but not kind of forsaking, in my opinion, of that, the gameplay, because I think the gameplay is pretty solid, is, you know, just from the one play. But it's got an interesting idea, it's an interesting theme, and so you'll be able to see some of the artwork, of course, on their Kickstarter page and everything, to kind of drive the point home. But anyway, that's kind of my experience of the game. A nice kind of, you know, I don't want to call it light, because I think it'll play quickly, so it feels more of a medium game that's full. And even though it's probably a shorter game after you've played it 2 or 3 times, you know, I still think it's going to have a little bit of bite to it, and a little bit of sort of maybe a little press your luck. You know, when do I want to really commit to sales because I've got to catch up or try to even out the bonuses? There's even a little accounting stuff you can do that's kind of interesting and funny. So it's thematic, it's interesting, you know, mechanically and strategically. So anyway, that's basically my preview for ESSEN the game. Thanks.